Zazil Ha emerged as a powerful political figure within the Itza Maya world during a period when Spanish conquest had not yet fully closed around the Yucatan Peninsula. Unlike many regions that fell quickly, Itza Maya maintained independence for generations after the fall of the great Maya cities and long after the Spanish claimed dominion over much of Mesoamerica. Zazil Ha ruled not in the moment of first contact, but in the long, grinding aftermath, when survival depended on diplomacy, memory, and the careful balancing of resistance against annihilation. The Itza Maya occupied a unique position in the colonial era, centered around Lake Piton. Their capital of Piton remained unconquered for nearly 2 centuries after the Spanish arrival in the Americas. This longevity was not accidental. It was the result of calculated political strategy, deep environmental knowledge, and a leadership class that understood when to resist openly and when to delay. Zazil Ha was part of this tradition. As a female leader in a male-dominated colonial narrative, her authority challenges modern assumptions about power in the Maya world. Leadership among the Maya was not exclusively male, and political legitimacy could be inherited, negotiated, and reinforced through lineage, ritual, and alliance. Zazil Ha's leadership unfolded during a time of constant pressure. Spanish missionaries, soldiers, and administrators repeatedly attempted to penetrate its territory through persuasion rather than force, believing conversion would succeed where armies had failed. Zazil Ha understood the danger of these overtures. Conversion was not simply spiritual, it was political surrender. Accepting missionaries meant accepting Spanish authority, tribute, and eventual occupation. Her responses were calculated, outwardly cooperative when necessary, but strategically evasive. She allowed dialogue without submission, buying time for her people while denying the Spanish a foothold. Unlike resistant leaders who relied on warfare, Zazil Ha's power lay in governance. She maintained internal cohesion among the Itza, while navigating external threats that could fracture unity. Spanish strategy depended on division, turning indigenous groups against one another through promises of protection and favor. Zazil Ha resisted this by reinforcing its identity and autonomy, preserving ritual practices, oral history, and political continuity even as surrounding regions fell under colonial control. Resistance, in her case, was not always loud. It was patient. The geography of the Itza heartland strengthened her position. Dense forests, swamps, and waterways made large-scale invasion difficult. The island city of Piton itself was defensible, accessible primarily by canal. Zazil Ha understood this terrain not as a barrier, but as leverage. Spanish expeditions struggled with disease, logistics, and unfamiliar conditions. Each failed attempt reinforced the Itzawa reputation as unconquerable. Zazil Ha used this reputation strategically, allowing the myth of Itza power to work alongside actual defenses. Zazil Ha's role also reflects the importance of women in Maya political continuity, while Spanish chroniclers often ignored or minimized female authority. Indigenous records and oral traditions suggest women played central roles in diplomacy, lineage, and succession. Zazil Ha embodied this continuity, linking past sovereignty to future survival. Her leadership ensured that resistance did not depend on constant warfare, which would have been unsustainable, but on endurance. As decades passed, Spanish pressure intensified. The surrounding Maya regions were increasingly absorbed into colonial systems, isolating the Itza politically and economically. Zazil Ha faced an impossible challenge. Open war risked annihilation. Total submission guaranteed cultural erasure. Her leadership navigated the narrow space between those outcomes, She delayed conquest not by defeating Spain outright, but by refusing to give them what they needed most: permanence. Eventually, long after Zazil Ha, the Spanish would conquer Yucatan in 1697, ending the last independent Maya kingdom. But this conquest came centuries later than expected, and at enormous cost. Leaders like Zazil Ha made that delay possible. Their resistance preserved Maya language, ritual, and identity across generations, allowing Itza culture to survive colonization rather than vanish beneath it. Zazil Ha's legacy is often overlooked because it does not fit the familiar image of resistance as battlefield heroism. Her resistance was structural. She resisted through governance, memory, and refusal. She demonstrated that survival itself could be political, that maintaining sovereignty for even one more generation mattered, that delay was a weapon. In the broader history of the Americas, Zazil Ha represents a different kind of power, not the power of conquest, but the power of continuity. She ruled in a world where empire advanced relentlessly, yet she found ways to slow it, confuse it, and deny it certainty. Her leadership reminds us that resistance does not always announce itself with fire and blood. Sometimes it speaks quietly, endures patiently, and outlasts expectations. Zazil Ha did not lead a final battle. She led a final era, an era in which the Itza remained free while the rest of the Maya world was absorbed into empire. Her story forces us to expand our understanding of resistance beyond violence alone. It asks us to recognize diplomacy, governance, and cultural preservation as equally powerful forms of defiance. Zazil Ha stands as one of the last guardians of independent Maya sovereignty, a leader who held space for her people when that space was shrinking everywhere else. Her legacy lives not in monuments or imperial records, but in the survival of Itza identity itself. Follow for more history they never taught us in school.